Hello, welcome once again to Leto's Law. I'm Steve Leto. Today we're going to do a casual Friday. I did a podcast a week ago in a video about where I got a sales guy on the phone trying to sell me a lower credit card interest rate. It was a scam. And I messed with the guy for 15 minutes and then he hung up on me after saying something untoward to me. But I put that video up. I didn't call it a Leto's Law. I simply just put it up as a video. And I thought, maybe on Fridays I should try to do something a little more fun, a little lighthearted. So we're going to do a behind the scenes of Leto's Law. Okay? I think you might enjoy this if you've seen a lot of my shows. And then also at the end, if we have time, after I do the little walkthrough that we're going to do in a second, I'm thinking that I'm going to be able to tell you a funny story about a recent phenomenon with some guys who've been emailing me. Which you may or may not find interesting. But again, like I said, if you're a regular viewer of these videos, a regular follower of my podcast, I think you'll enjoy them. So if today has a kind of a sketchy, casual Friday feel to it, that's because that's what we're looking at. Okay, casual Friday. I'm wearing jeans, and we're going to do some stuff a little different today. So first of all, Leto's Law, behind the scenes, literally. So people ask me from time to time about the stuff behind me, and I know it's in the background of the shots, but it might not be clear for everyone to see, so we're going to take a look at it. Top row back is microphones. I've got quite a few microphones because I worked in radio for a while, and this reminds me of my time as a disc jockey and then later as a talk show host. And some of them work, some of them don't work. They're primarily for show, but I do like this one in particular. It's the Shure. You'll often see people like Elvis Presley used it. And a lot of the rockabilly guys use that, so that's a popular microphone. It's obviously very iconic looking. And we got the slightly older ribbon mics and so on. And of course, the Lollipop, I get a lot of comments, and that's a very distinctive microphone. But I just like my microphones as a reminder of when I was playing the hits. Row in front of that is the cars. There's Bobby Isaac's Can-K Daytona, number 71. He was driving a car that this model is based on back in 1970 when he won the national championship. I've driven the actual car that is the model that this is based on. I got a chance to drive that a few years ago. Next to that, of course, is a Tucker 48, and I wrote a book about Preston Tucker and his battle to build the car of tomorrow, so I've got to have one of those, of course. And then on the other side of the cars, we have Chrysler Turbine car, another wonderful car I wrote a book about. I love those cars, and I've gotten to drive two of them in my life so far. And then at the end, we've got the Dodge Daytona, the Charger Daytona, and this is actually just the street version of the car that's on the other end. But I wrote a book about the building of these cars as well. So I'm fascinated by the winged cars. I've written books on them. Hence, I've got to have them behind me while I'm doing my show. Now, back here, of course, the top row is the books. I'm always joking about the blue law books, and I say, hey, if there's laws that are written down someplace. This is a slightly older set, which I will now confess to you is actually an older set, but when I look a law book up, and I find a law, then I'll double check it to make sure that the law is still on the books. But I use this one more as a prop, simply because they're bright blue, and I like the color blue. In case you haven't noticed, on the very end is a block of wood from the Italian Hall, and I've mentioned before I wrote a book about the Italian Hall disaster. That's where in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, someone yelled fire during a children's Christmas party, and 73 people died in a stampede trying to get out of the building. That block of wood actually came from the Italian Hall, as did this chair, which is next to me during many of my podcasts. If you see the funny shadows in the wall behind it, that's because that chair has those slats. And that chair was in the hall in 1913 when the disaster took place. Next to this, of course, is a mug from Legally Awesome, Talks on Law. I was a guest on their show. And so I will, in fact, have the mug on display. Next to that is a glass paperweight from Finland, Ihtala glassware. A lot of Finnish references here, of course. And on this end, we have one of the turbine car models that they gave away back in the day. There is the full model inside the box. That is what you call a toy in the box, so it's worth a little more money. I'm not keeping it as a keepsake. I'm keeping it as a something to do with the book I wrote, but I'm not, it's obviously not an investment for me, but I don't take it out and play with it either, so I guess, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. And then if you're curious, some of the books out here actually are books that I do recommend. The far left 3 books, The Structure of Everyday Life, The Perspective of the World, and The Wheels of Commerce. If you're into history, these are 3 of my favorite history books, especially The Structures of Everyday Life by Fernand Braudel, among my favorites. And as you go through here. Laughing Whitefish by Robert Traver, or John Volcker actually, is a good book. Vanishing Hitchhiker, of course, Urban Legends. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance is a favorite. The Measure of All Things, great history book. A biography of Lorenzo da Ponte. I've read 2 biographies of him. Wonderful books. He was the librettist who wrote the librettos for several of Mozart's operas, and a bunch of other wacky stuff in here, including a book on the Turk, which was the hoax where they had a machine that played chess back in the old days, long before they had computers, and so on. And then, of course, a box from a company called Breitling that makes wristwatches. You may have seen the watch from time to time whenever I wave my left hand in front of the camera. And then down below, of course, we've got some more books, my medals from my recent marathons, Rocking America, Story of Radio in New York, a couple copies of the Arabian Nights, primarily because I like the illustrations by Maxfield Parrish, and then a few others along here, most of which I've read and enjoyed quite a bit, and that's why I keep them at hand. So that's what's going on behind the scenes, or actually just behind the guy who's talking into the camera at Lehto's Law. And now I'm going to tell you a funny story about some wacky emails I've been getting lately. So we'll change cameras. So one of the later things that's been happening that I find kind of interesting, and again, I'm always leery about talking too much about this stuff, but you know, I think it's entertaining on some level. But one of the things I try very hard to do on this show is I talk about the law, primarily cars, car buying, lemon law, traffic laws, and then occasionally I'll branch out into slightly other topics, but that's my area of expertise. But one of the things I avoid doing is I don't talk politics on this show. And I know a lot of podcasts and video guys will talk politics all day long. And I used to do a talk show, and I learned a long time ago you don't talk politics because what happens is it devolves into an argument over politics, and you lose track of what you're talking about in the first place. So I decided a long time ago, no politics. So for instance, a couple of years ago, there was an election. And the day of the election, I was driving home, and I got pulled over by a police officer, and he didn't give me a ticket. And I did a podcast the next day about the fact that I got pulled over by a police officer. And I think I mentioned it happened on election day, but I didn't mention the election because my show is not about politics. But what's happened lately, and this has happened 4 or 5 times, so it's actually not a fluke. It's one of these things that's happened enough to where I realize that this is actually a subset of the people who watch this show, is I'll get an email. And I tell people, if you want to ask me questions, call me, email me. I'm here to talk. I talk to people, dozens of strangers a day send me questions. I give them answers. But I get the email, and it always says something to the effect of, Steve, I know that you don't like talking about politics, but I've got a question for you. And I'll say, oh boy, I know where it's going, but I'm okay, fine, whatever. I go, what's your question? And they'll go, you made a comment the other day that's not political per se, but I'm curious about it. And I'll give you the most recent example. As somebody said that I did the thing on civil forfeiture, and I pointed out that a right-wing or conservative judge might be in favor of civil forfeiture, even though most Americans consider civil forfeiture to be stupid. It seems unconstitutional. And I had several people ask me, they go, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me because I would think a right-wing conservative judge would find civil forfeiture overreach by the federal government. And I said, well, that's the interesting thing about the law is sometimes there aren't bright lines. And while one person might say it's overreach by the federal government, someone else might say it's police doing their job. And people who are on one end of the spectrum might be able to say, we are in favor of law enforcement, and if they find that a useful tool, then we'll allow that to happen. So I had several people ask me, and they use that as the inroad to say, we're not talking politics here. I have a question for you about that statement. So I would tell them what I just told you, which is what any attorney would tell you, or any judge would tell you, or anybody who studies these things would tell you. That's simply 2 ways of looking at it, and sometimes people look at it this way, sometimes people look at it that way. But I've never said in particular, I agree with this, or I agree with that, or I agree with one end of the spectrum or the other. In fact, I've said specifically that when it comes to politics, I actually like some things that are considered right-wing, and I like some things that are considered left-wing. And so my entire life, to me, has been a quandary when it comes to elections because I actually almost always have to vote for somebody who stands for something I disagree with. But I have to decide which is most important. So I'm not going to discuss politics on this show. So when I write that back to somebody, I almost immediately get back an email from them saying, oh, so what you're saying is this. And then they start trying to put words in my mouth. And it usually ends up that within 3 or 4 emails, they're calling me names. And I had this happen to me yesterday, where the conversation started out civil enough, where I got an email saying, I know you don't talking politics, but I'm curious about this. And I respond to the question, I give them an answer, and then they escalated a little bit. And within 3 or 4 emails, they're literally calling me names. You're an idiot. You're stupid. How dumb are you to think this? I would think an attorney would be smarter than that. God, you're a moron. And I write them back and I go, what's with the name calling? And they go, oh, so you're offended by that, are you? Yes? Aren't most people offended by name calling? But the strange thing is that they started out by saying, Steve, I know you don't want to talk politics. This isn't a political question, but can I ask you this one thing? And I say, okay, and I try to answer it as best as I can even-handed. And they say, okay, but see, now you're saying this. No, that's not what I'm saying. Oh, so that's not what you're saying, and you're saying this. No, that's not what I'm saying either. Oh, so you're an idiot then. I can't believe how stupid you are that you're an attorney and you believe that to be true. Okay, what's the name calling? I didn't call you any names. Yeah, you called me stupid. Oh, so now you think you're smarter than me? No, I didn't say that either. So again, I understand. The problem with the internet is twofold. I'm going to fix one problem when I bring in my friend Tom Spademan, the philosopher, and we're going to fix the internet when it comes to arguments. But the real problem with the internet is the barrier to entry is too low. Anybody can get on the internet. They can watch videos, they can post comments, and they can send emails. And don't get me wrong, when people start calling me names, I just block their email and never hear from them again. So for right now, for all I know, my inbox garbage can is filled up with vitriolic hate mail from people who don't want to talk politics with me. But the point is that I've had this happen enough times recently where I just feel compelled to talk about it, but I'm not expecting to do anything about it. I really appreciate the support I get on this channel. I don't have millions of subscribers. I've got 13,000 some odd subscribers right now, but I get a lot of comments on many of my videos, and 99.9% of them are beautiful. Even if you disagree with me, I don't care. Tell me your thoughts. I like to hear your comments. But what bothers me is the people who log on and swear and call me names, and they know I'm going to delete the comment. Why do you do that? But then the ones who say, Steve, can I ask you a question? It's not going to be political. I'm just going to send you an email. And then the email devolves into that. And the question is like, what are they accomplishing by doing that? I don't know. But I assure you, between now and a week from now, I'm going to get at least one email from somebody who's going to say, hey, Steve, I got a question for you. I know you don't talk politics, but I think I figured out something you mentioned the other day that hints how you feel about these things. And by the way, the email I got yesterday said, the last email I got that I read from the person before I blocked him, he said, your show has become so overtly political lately that you're a liar when you say you don't talk politics. My show is now overtly political. So I'm curious to know what he thinks about the stuff on cable. But anyways, this is Casual Friday. That's why I threw that out there. Just a funny little story. I've been living with this, so I'm sharing it with you. And I hope you enjoyed the little behind-the-scenes action. Questions or comments, as always, comment below. Avoid the swear words, and I'll leave up the comments. I thank you for watching and listening. Bye-bye.